Good morning, everybody. Thank you for waiting. My name is Joseph Disho. I'm the Director for International Relations and Partnerships at this great university called the University of South Africa, Unisa. It's my privilege to run the program, as it were, this morning, as we engage in reasoning and conversation in respect of what the country really needs. We are here to sink our teeth a little bit more to understand and unravel the needs of business in relation to those who need jobs. And we are very delighted to have a distinguished assemblage of people to help us understand that. We have this morning to talk with us the Vice Chancellor of the University, Professor Mandla Makanya, who is hosting this event. For those who haven't met him, he's here. And we are very delighted to have the Ambassador of the United States of America to South Africa, Ambassador 26 to the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Donald Gibbs, who will be kicking off our conversation this morning. He's a very good friend of the university since he came to South Africa in 2009. I will introduce him momentarily. And we have, as a very distinguished guest from the United States, Ms. Judith McHale, who is the Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. All right, that's good. It's a great honor to be here today with Dr. Nzimande, the Minister of Higher Education, a good friend and a wonderful leader. Dr. Makiana, see, we have trouble with these languages too. Vice Chancellor of the University of South Africa, our Program Director, Undersecretary of State Judith McHale, business leaders, and thank goodness for my favorite South African expression, all protocols observed, because I'm sure I left somebody out. You know, I really want to thank Unisa for hosting this event, but in particular, thank the Minister for coming up with the idea for this meeting. I think it's a great example of private sector, government, civic organizations coming together to address one of the most critical problems, not just facing South Africa, but this is a critical problem in the United States and around the world. How do we create quality jobs, and how do we prepare a workforce that not only fulfills our employment needs, but actually helps drive innovation and economic growth? If we can unite these three sectors, I think there's no problem that can't be addressed, and I think this forum today is a great example of doing that. Education and training here in South Africa is of real personal interest, not just to me, but to my whole family, including my wife Liz, who's sitting up front and has been helping lead our education work with her background in education reform from the United States. As the U.S. government, we're working across both the Ministry of Higher Education and the Ministry of Basic Education to share what we're doing in the United States so that we can each learn from each other and promote education. Within South Africa, we have a number of programs working on education, and it's our #1 priority. We've invested in supporting programs ranging from teacher training to postgraduate exchange programs, and we do all this with the overriding idea that we are working with the South African government in partnership to improve the nation's schools and training. Our 2-year partnership with the University of Pretoria has allowed us to open the Mae Jameson U.S. Science Reading Room in Mamelodi, which Judith and I had the pleasure of being at this weekend, which provides supplemental education resources for thousands of students. Our Peace Corps volunteers teach today in more than 200 rural primary schools in South Africa. Our Access English Language program provides after-school support and resources to hundreds of students across the country as they prepare for their matrix. And closer to our theme today, we've worked with the Ministry of Higher Education to create and sustain programs that respond to employer needs through the Further Education and Training Program. This education debate that's an attempt to improve education is the #1 priority for the South African government, and it's the #1 priority for President Obama, who's made education reform in the United States his #1 objective. Some of the reforms that President Obama is pursuing in the US are very controversial, as they are elsewhere, but President Obama brings a firm belief that we owe it to our children and to our workforce to tackle these vital issues head on right now. And I think that's why we're here today, to think about how we can do that here in South Africa. And I know that with Minister Nzimande, Minister McHale, and President Zuma, the commitment on the part of South Africa is equal. And as I work with businesses and philanthropies across South Africa, I see that same energy and drive. And I'm excited to hear from all the panelists today, as I know you are, about what they're doing to help contribute here. Before I introduce the panelists, though, I also want to acknowledge and talk about our wonderful Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs, Judith McHale. Judith is no stranger to South Africa. She was born in New York City, but her father was a diplomat. She grew up overseas, living and studying both in the UK and here in South Africa. She was in South Africa during the dark days of apartheid, and her experience here inspired her lifelong commitment to social justice and engagement with development issues, particularly in Africa. In the 1980s, Judith served as general counsel for a small startup cable company known as Music Television. Some of you guys today may have heard of it. It's now known as MTV. She also oversaw legal affairs for Nickelodeon and VH1. In 1987, she became general counsel at Discovery Communications, which was then a small company with just a few US cable channel customers. She went on to serve as chief operating officer, CEO, and eventually president, while she helped to grow Discovery into one of the most successful media companies in the world, with more than 100 channels today, available in 35 languages, reaching more than 1 billion subscribers in over 170 countries. In 2006, she started a new phase of her career in partnership with the Global Environment Fund and worked to launch the GEF Africa Growth Fund, an investment vehicle intending to focus on providing expansion capital to small and medium-sized enterprises that provide consumer goods and services in emerging African markets. But in 2009, we were lucky enough to steal her away. You know, they mentioned in my introduction that I was head of presidential personnel, which most people in South Africa would know that as comrade deployment. And in that job, it was the worst job in Washington because everybody wanted to work for President Obama, or at least all the Democrats did. Some Republicans did too at that time. And we were fighting people off, and all I did was say no, but there were a few people who we wanted to offer 10 different jobs to, and Judith was one of those people. She could have done almost anything she wanted in the US government. Instead, she took on what I think is one of the hardest jobs that we have in the US government, which is explaining our public policy all around the world. It's her job to make sure that we are communicating, building partnerships everywhere, and also listening to make sure that our posts are reporting back so that she can help explain to President Obama and Secretary Clinton how the world is viewing us and how we need to either change our policies or change our communication to more effectively partner with the rest of the world. It's an incredibly challenging job, and we are incredibly lucky to have Judith McHale serving in that job. A round of applause for Judith.